So welcome everyone today. Our presentation today is by Kevin Cornelius, and Kevin is a licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice here with the Feeling Good Institute in Mountain View. And Kevin recently began to manage our intensive therapy program, and he's a wonderful clinician and director of the intensive therapy program. So let's welcome Kevin, who will be presenting on incorporating intensive therapy sessions into your practice to improve patient outcomes. Thanks, Kevin.
Well, thank you so much, Jill. And thanks everybody for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you all here. And I'm going to get started right away. So thank you.
Great.
Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about Feeling Good Institute, which is where I work and manage the intensive therapy program like Jill just mentioned. So we're really on a mission to improve lives with effective therapy. And we train and certify therapists in the processes of evidence-based cognitive behavioral therapy that are shown to be most effective. And before joining Feeling Good Institute, therapists go through hundreds of hours of training in all aspects of effective therapy and are vetted to ensure that patients are getting a high-quality therapist. And additionally, they all take part in our weekly system of continuous improvement. And Feeling Good Institute therapists treat a broad variety of challenges, such as depression, anxiety, and relationship issues. And because of the rigorous approach and training process, our therapists are especially adept at hard-to-treat cases. We offer video-based therapy across the US and Canada and have treatment centers in New York City, Silicon Valley, Canada, and Israel. We also offer intensive therapy with longer and more frequent therapy sessions over a shorter time span to accelerate recovery. Of course, that's why we're here today to talk about that. And we have our lower fee options with therapists who are under supervision by an advanced clinician who provides oversight for each session, which is a tremendous value for the money. So our objectives today, after this presentation, I'm really hoping that you're going to be able to describe at least 2 benefits of intensive one-on-one treatment and list 2 patient characteristics that make one a good candidate for intensive one-on-one therapy. And let's have an introduction here to just talk about what is intensive one-on-one therapy. I would define that as therapy that's designed to provide longer and more frequent therapy sessions over a shorter time span to accelerate patient recovery. And the treatment we're talking about is one-on-one. It's not group therapy, and it's tailored to the patient's individual needs. And I'm going to stop my share for a moment so that I'm going to be able to conduct a little poll here briefly. And I'm going to check in with all of you just to find out who here is currently offering, or how many of us are actually offering one-on-one intensive therapy as part of your practice. Just so we have an understanding of the group here a little bit. Okay, the answers are rolling in, and we're seeing, I think, a pretty good majority are not yet. So we'll give you a moment before the poll is about to end here. Okay, so what I'm learning is that today is going to be an opportunity for people to learn about offering intensives and to hopefully consider incorporating them into your practice for the majority of you, because the vast majority, about 73% of the people here, are not currently offering them. So I'm kind of excited about that. We're going to actually start today by talking a little bit about reasons not to do one-on-one intensive therapy. Because there are, some things to consider. First of all, therapists often have anxiety about doing intensives. There's a real pressure to perform and deliver big results. It can also make a big impact on a therapist's schedule. It can be challenging to work intensives in around your usual patient schedule with weekly patients. It can be expensive for the clients. When we do intensives here, we ask the client to make the full financial commitment up front, and there's not a refund unless they cancel with at least 2 weeks notice. So that's not a great fit for everyone. It requires ongoing marketing, and there's a lot of turnaround, right? When we're doing intensives, we're working with people for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and so there is a need to keep that flow going of new people coming in. And longer, more frequent sessions do take a lot more energy for both the patient and the therapist. And then managing cancellations, illness, or emergencies can be daunting anyway, especially with intensives. So we want to keep that in mind. So the research that supports, let's talk about, why to do one-on-one intensive therapy. So I recently put together a research brief for Feeling Good Institute, and it's in your handout, so you can see the full research brief there. This was on an article that I found, or a study called How Much Therapy is Needed to Treat Depression. And this was really exciting. In this study, it was found that providing the same number of hours of therapy over a shorter period of time led to a significant improvement in depression. And then the treatment outcomes were actually worse as the same number of therapy hours were stretched out over a longer period of time. And those results suggested that intensive therapy is more effective and economical for the treatment of depression as compared with traditional once-per-week treatment. And you can see some other articles that I'm citing to support intensives and other elements of therapy that I'll be mentioning throughout the course today in your handout. And let's just talk about why I'm here today. So I'm really excited about being with you because of my passion for intensive one-on-one therapy. It's really transformed my practice. It's very rewarding to see people make really profound change and build confidence in their own skills. And then my work has improved overall. So because of the intensive therapy process, I've really learned to set and be consistent with simple, achievable goals in all of my work with my therapy clients. So I'll talk a little bit about the results that I've seen in my recent intensive one-on-one therapy. In your handout, you'll see a summary of chart records for the last 10 one-on-one intensive therapy patients that I've worked with. And what we've seen with that testing, and by the way, this is using a tool called the Brief Mood Survey created by Dr. David Burns. It's testing for a number of things, but on this excerpt that I've put in your handout, we're looking at depression and anxiety, and that scale is between 0, not at all, to 20, which would be severe. So with these most recent 10 patients, there was an average 65% reduction in depression, an average 64% reduction in anxiety when we look at their score before their first session and after their final session. And I'll also mention that when you look at that chart record, you'll see that for the end session, that after session survey, that all of those patients fell within the range of between 0 and 4 for their depression and anxiety symptoms. And that's really in the ideal range on that scale. Anything that's 5 and above would be in the range where we consider using therapy to help someone with a mood problem. Between 0 and 4, it's the usual ups and downs of life. So those 10 patients were quite successful. And let's talk about some of the benefits of one-on-one intensive therapy. The intensive schedule can keep momentum moving forward and help clients make significant change. It can provide relief from painful symptoms quickly. The emphasis on learning skills can be very empowering for clients. It can be a great fit for someone taking a break from a busy schedule who might not otherwise have time for weekly therapy. And then for some patients, customized individual intensive therapy can help them avoid hospitalization, and highly personalized and adapted to meet the individual needs of the client. I think that's a really important thing to highlight. Okay. One thing you're going to want to think about are billing and insurance concerns. So we really want to be aware of what the plans that we're in network with will and will not cover when it comes to the number of hours of therapy per day. So it might be a good idea if you're going to offer intensive therapy to speak with the insurance plan in advance to learn how to bill properly for a treatment plan that involves more than one 50-minute session per day. And if you're out of network with insurance, you want to discuss potential limitations of receiving reimbursement for more than one 50-minute session per day. And I'm going to pause for a moment and mention that if you have questions come up and you want to make sure that you have a chance for me to potentially answer them, please, in the chat, you can send your questions to Jill. And then at the end, she's going to facilitate some question and answer. Okay. This slide is just showing you the way that we communicate the concerns that we often treat in intensive therapy with patients. So we're using some very patient-friendly language here, and you can refer to that if you're wanting to communicate well to patients what might be a good fit for intensive therapy. And let's consider what types of clients are a good fit for this type of therapy. Well, an ideal client for intensive one-on-one therapy is someone who is stable and not in crisis. Their safety is not in danger. They're willing to set specific goals, work on one problem at a time, and there's a strong willingness and maybe even a great interest in doing homework before, during, and after the treatment. And of course, you're going to want to assess to make sure that they're going to be able to participate in longer, higher intensity sessions. And then I'd like to invite you to be really creative in thinking about all the different opportunities that might present themselves for potential intensive therapy with someone. So some possible clients might be a student who's on break from school, a person who gets ongoing supportive counseling with another therapist who could benefit from specific cognitive skills or exposure work to address anxiety and or depression. I can think of just in the last year, several patients that I've worked with where this was the case. So they were getting great treatment from someone that was really more talk therapy for support. And that therapist realized, you know, you're going to need some specific skills for helping you with panic attacks. So let's refer you to do an intensive. They did that. They got those panic attacks down and went back to the counselor that they had a relationship with and continued wonderful supportive therapy. So that's an opportunity. A person who's on medical leave from work due to depression or anxiety who wants to make significant progress quickly and learn skills to help themselves as they return to work. I've worked with a number of people in intensives that fit that description. There may be a person who's leaving residential addiction treatment who needs a step down from a high level of support to help them maintain their progress. And someone leaving hospitalization who wants to learn skills to support their recovery as they return to their usual life routine might be a good fit. Or someone who's from an area with limited therapy resources who is traveling to you to learn skills to help themselves with mood problems or habits and addictions. So I would say that that's one of the most exciting things about intensives that we do here at Feeling Good Institute. People will travel here from all different parts of the world in order to get help in an intensive with us, which is really fulfilling and exciting to be a part of. And of course, there's more. So you may think of some other wonderful opportunities for offering intensives. We do want to keep in mind that some people are not a good fit for intensive therapy. We mentioned before, but safety is a big concern. Also, some clients are really a better fit for long-term supportive counseling, and they're not really looking for brief goal-oriented therapy. If somebody is in the process or requires detox, definitely not a good fit. Some people might not be interested in setting specific goals, or longer sessions in an intensive schedule would be burdensome for them. We also want to always be sensitive to diversity, equity, and inclusion concerns when we're assessing whether or not someone might be a great fit for intensive therapy. So, I like to explore any cultural concerns that might need consideration to make the therapy more effective. So for instance, not everybody is from a culture that is so goal-oriented. And maybe, what's more sensitive to their culture and their upbringing is something that's more process-oriented. And so we would explore that and see, could intensive therapy be a good fit for you? Can I adapt the way that I work in an intensive to have it be more suitable for you? I just want to point out that when we're addressing these concerns, the sensitivity that we want to have is that we're not stigmatizing someone because their cultural background might make them not as good of a fit for something that's so goal oriented. We want to be really, we don't want to contribute to someone's oppression or stigmatization. We also want to consider neurodivergence and how it may impact the use of longer, more frequent sessions. And again, we can adapt things to make it fit someone's needs. Also, a client might have disabilities that need to be considered when we're setting up our schedule. So all in all, we just want to be really flexible, sensitive, and responsive to the individual needs of the client when we're setting goals and the treatment schedule. Okay, I thought it would be good to provide you with an overall map of the intensive one-on-one therapy process. So when I'm working with people, we're starting with an initial consultation, and then we're going to, if let's say that they're a great fit for intensive therapy and we're in agreement on that, then we would move into assessment and goal setting. And then there would be some pre-intensive homework for the patient to do. And then there would be specific concerns that we're going to talk about soon about how to start the intensive well. And then also the things that we do during the treatment, depending upon the goals that have been set for the treatment. And then how we end the treatment. And finally, the ongoing work after the treatment and any follow-up that may need to be done. So bringing up the option of intensive one-on-one treatment, we've really found that one reason many therapists haven't used intensive treatment is that they have some anxiety about bringing it up with potential patients. And so we really want to start, if you're going to be offering intensive therapy, you want to start communicating that to clients really effectively. You might have information included on your website, or you might use a pre-consultation survey for people to complete when they've signed up for an initial consultation with you. And in there, you could have a question, are you more interested in traditional weekly therapy? Or are you interested in discussing the possibility of doing intensive therapy, making a lot of progress in a short amount of time with lots of therapy within a 1 or 2 week period? Of course, at the consultation, we would want to be able to discuss intensive therapy in a very concise and enticing way. So we can practice our elevator pitch for describing intensives quickly and effectively. And then you would want to let the therapists in your referral network know that you offer one-on-one intensive therapy and that you're available to collaborate and coordinate treatment. So another thing here is my pitch I wanted to share with you. So this might be the way that I describe intensives to a potential client. I'd say that this kind of therapy is a really great opportunity for you to make big change with a lot of therapy in a short amount of time. The frequency and extended length of sessions allow us to keep the momentum going and give you powerful reduction in your symptoms. And the goal here is for you to come away from the intensive with real skills that you can use for the rest of your life whenever negative moods become a problem again. It's kind of like learning to become your own therapist. And the treatment is individual and totally customized to be the best fit for you. So that's one example of how to describe that to a potential client. Let's talk about creating a treatment plan. So the key is going to be setting specific, achievable goals. And let's just talk for a moment about why would we want to use goals in therapy. I found an article I really liked that helped me pull out some points that seem to really apply to intensives. So the article is called "What Do You Want to Change?" It's from Therapy Today. And goals can help focus and direct clients' and therapists' attention in the therapy work. Goals are very important in short-term work where interventions have to be tightly focused to achieve results within the time limits. And setting goals for therapy may also give hope, energize clients towards their goals, boost persistence, and help them find more effective strategies for achieving their goals. Research shows that people are more likely to achieve what they want if they set explicit goals and that better clinical outcomes are associated with therapist and client agreement on the therapy goals. That's a really important point that I want to highlight for a moment. When we're setting up the goals for treatment, it's always with that agreement in mind. We're checking in to make sure, yes, this is what the patient wants to get from the therapy. So when we're creating the treatment plan, we might want to consider a structure for turning patients' concerns, which sometimes are kind of open-ended and vague and broad, and really focus them down into simple, clear goals that can be achieved in brief, intensive treatment. So one tool that would be great for that is what's called the miracle cure question. You might already be familiar with this. I might ask the patient, let's say that the intensive therapy is super successful, a miracle occurs, and you get exactly what it is that you need out of this therapy. What would be different? What's the change that you're really looking for here? And then we would work with them to really boil that down to 1 or 2 skills-based treatment goals. I'll give you some examples of those in a moment. There's going to be some homework, I would say before, during, and after the treatment. And we're going to want to include relapse prevention in the treatment plan, and I'll talk to you more about that shortly. And then there would be ongoing homework when the treatment is complete. I'd like to give you a case example. So we're going to call this patient Cynthia. Any of the examples I'm giving you in my presentation names have been changed and some details have been changed. And this patient was a 40-year-old African-American cisgender lesbian married woman. She lives in Los Angeles with her wife and 3 elementary and middle school aged children. And she's had a successful career in television writing and recently had a dream breakthrough in her career after a very lucrative script deal. And the way that she described the problem is that there's this paradox that the more successful she becomes, the more anxious she became about money. And recently she and her wife were looking at buying a new car, as the cars that they have were quite old and too small for their family. And after looking at cars and getting close to buying one while at a dealership, she went into an anxiety spiral that now impacts every area of her life. So she pulled out of the deal and has been racked with guilt, depression, and anxiety ever since. When I asked her the miracle cure question, her miracle was that she'd be able to spend her hard-earned money without becoming overwhelmed by fear. But she really wanted to lower her anxiety and depression and have skills to prevent this from happening again in the future. So we worked together on defining the treatment plan with the goals being learn and practice the skills for lowering and tolerating anxiety, and learn and practice the skills for lowering depression. The pre-intensive homework involved reading and doing exercises from the book When Panic Attacks for 30 minutes each day. That's a book by Dr. David Burns. And then the schedule for the treatment was going to involve 12 hours over 2 weeks, plus 2 one-hour weekly follow-up sessions. And in the treatment plan, the methods that we were going to be using would involve cognitive therapy methods, exposure methods, resistance reducing methods, which I'll talk to you about shortly. And then we would end the treatment with relapse prevention training and ongoing homework. So I'm going to talk more broadly now, not just about Cynthia, but just how we prepare to start an intensive with any patient. So we want to use pre-intensive homework. And the books that I typically use would be for depression. I'm going to be looking at Feeling Great by Dr. David Burns. You're going to notice a theme in my book titles. They're pretty much all going to be by Dr. Burns. And so I do want to mention some other books that I've used, so I don't seem like I'm a little obsessed here. But for instance, Overcoming Depression is from the Treatments That Work series by Mark Gilson and Arthur Freeman. I think that would be a great book to possibly use for tools that would help with lowering depression. And you're going to have your go-to books that you would probably want to incorporate. For anxiety, I like to use When Panic Attacks by Dr. David Burns. I also found that I like Mastery of Your Anxiety and Worry. That's also a Treatments That Work series book. That's by Michelle Krasky and David Barlow. And then, let's see here, Habits and Addictions. I really like on Dr. Burns's website, he has some free chapters from his most recent book on habits and addictions, and that really helps prepare someone for what they're going to be doing in an intensive with me if they're wanting to change an unwanted habit or have some support with ending an addiction. During the intensive, we're going to be using routine testing to track progress towards reaching the client's goals. So what I use is the Brief Mood Survey by Dr. Burns, and that's testing for things like the level of anxiety, suicidal thoughts, depression, anger, positive feelings, and relationship satisfaction. And we would use that testing before the session and after each session. And there would also be an evaluation of the therapy session that the patient fills out. And that's all going to go towards just helping us fine tune the treatment to make it just right for them. There are lots of other tools that you might want to incorporate. One great tool would be the APA puts out the level 1 and level 2 cross-cutting survey, and you can get the forms for that for free on their website. It's the same thing that's in the DSM-5. Before assessment, before and after every session, and then a good idea is to use testing a month after termination. If you want to consider doing that, it's a good idea to include that in informed consent. Let them know I'll be reaching out to you a month after your treatment to find out how you're doing, and we'll have you take this survey again. During the intensive, we're going to be focusing on empathy in the beginning. No surprise to anyone here, one of the most important things in any therapy is going to be listening well and conveying warmth, empathy, and understanding. That's a huge key to effective therapy, especially in an intensive. So in the beginning, that's going to be the main focus. And we're going to want to build trust and connection with the patient. And then during the intensive, we're also talking about the ways that we melt away resistance to change. And I want to mention that, I think that skills for learning how to do this are really a powerful and unique thing that is taught at Feeling Good Institute. And if you're interested in learning these methods, there are wonderful trainings that you can explore on our website. And it's made a huge difference in my ability to do effective work with patients. And so I encourage you to take a look at that if you don't already have those kinds of tools available to you. So I mentioned that's really important in one-on-one therapy intensives. So we're going to spend a good deal of time in the intensive on lowering resistance. And that's going to really help make the methods more effective in a brief amount of time. And I'd like to give you some testing information about Cynthia, the example patient we were just talking about. So on her brief mood survey before her first session, she had a depression score of 12, an anxiety score of 13. That would be a moderate score for both of those. It's between 0 and 20 is the scale. Significantly strong levels of depression and anxiety. That initial session was 2 hours long, and this is a rough estimate of how much time was spent in each area, but probably about a good 30 minutes at least on empathy, and about 45 minutes on melting away resistance, and then about 30 minutes using some cognitive methods for changing feelings. And then at the end, we were wrapping up with assigning homework and doing some post-session testing. Okay. And then after the first session, we can see that she had a 50% reduction in her depression and a 46% reduction in anxiety. Now we're going to go back to talking about treatment in general for a moment. So for depression, when we're talking about the methods that we're going to be using, there's going to be a big focus on writing things down and using cognitive therapy methods. a lot of work looking at changing the thoughts that lead to depression in order to change feelings. We're going to include behavioral methods and address behaviors that may be making depression worse, procrastination, self-isolating, poor diet and sleep habits, among other elements. And then for pre-intensive homework, again, I mentioned Feeling Great and another book option that you can consider, Overcoming Depression. You'll have your own tools that you'll prefer to work with, I'm sure. Okay, let's talk about anxiety. We're going to be doing exposures galore, including things like cognitive flooding, in vivo exposure, interoceptive exposure, that's exposure to the physical sensations of anxiety and panic, shame attacking exercises, which are great exposures for social anxiety. The initial homework that I would choose is When Panic Attacks by Dr. David Burns. And then for habits and addictions, motivation is going to be the #1 priority that we're going to need to address. The triple paradox is a really wonderful tool to use for this. In my mind, it just popped up that there's a great workshop on this coming up, I think, in 2 days. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's still an opportunity to sign up for that and learn amazing tools like the triple paradox from Dr. Jill Levitt and Dr. David Burns. But the focus is really going to be on the plan for day 1 after the treatment is finished. So you think about it, if somebody is in an intensive round of therapy, they're getting a lot of therapy over the course of 1 or 2 weeks, tons of support, and they're feeling really great, they're making progress. What's life going to be like the day after the treatment ends? Well, we want to set them up for success with that. We want to plan ahead for that and let them know what they're going to be doing. And by the way, I want to make sure that I'm being clear that I don't think that someone is going to find total recovery from a serious addiction problem in a 1 or 2 week round of intensive therapy, right? There's going to be additional work done, of course, after that. So there may be follow-up work with maybe a more traditional once a week format with the patient after the intensive. There's other ways of following up, or there's also going to be other resources. Maybe they're going to be participating in a 12-step program. I just want to be clear, but I don't make promises like that intensives magically cure serious addictions, but they can be a really wonderful supplement to other support that somebody is getting, and they can make a huge difference in their recovery. So initial homework, I mentioned before, is the quote free chapters that are available on Dr. Burns's website. Okay, let's talk about how we end the treatment. Relapse prevention training, really key. Let's talk about what we mean by the concept of recovery. So one simple way that I discuss it with the patient is they're taking this brief mood survey before and after each one of their sessions. We're looking at a score between 0 and 20 on their depression and anxiety. The range that we're going for is between 0 and 4. That's where, life has its normal ups and downs, sadness, fear, that's a normal part of life. And what we're really looking at is a person feeling confident that, I can feel a whole range of human emotions and be okay. So are they going to have their bad days? Absolutely. What we want them to do is have more good days than bad days. So if they start noticing themselves having more bad days than good days, then what do they have now that they didn't have before they did the intensive treatment? Well, they have specific tools that they know have been successful for them in their treatment that they can pull out and work with again and keep themselves from going into a full-blown relapse of a mood disorder. And so the relapse prevention training that we're doing involves being honest about the probability of a relapse. In other words, the probability of negative feelings returning again is 100%, but it does not need to turn into a full-blown relapse of a mood disorder. And we set them up for success so that they're trained to know what to do when those negative symptoms inevitably return. And then let's go back to our case example of Cynthia. So there were some challenges. I don't want to give the impression that everything goes smoothly every time. Her treatment had to be extended 2 additional weeks due to her getting sick and then having to travel for work. It was during the pandemic. There's a little bit of flexibility, of course, when people are dealing with illness, especially then. 2 hours were added on to the treatment due to the loss of momentum by extending the length of the treatment. And we met the challenge with effective homework that she followed through on diligently, which enabled the momentum of progress in sessions to continue. So the tip that I learned from this case was that schedule challenges can be handled with flexibility without derailing the progress. And specific achievable homework goals can be very successful when an intensive has to be expanded. So how did things go? After 8 110-minute sessions over now 4 weeks instead of 6 hours over 2 weeks, she had a 67% reduction in depression and about a 77% reduction in anxiety. And then, by the way, following up with her afterwards, she was keeping negative symptoms within that 0 to 4 range. So we give the patient a treatment summary at the end. This is just a small excerpt of a full one. I included a full sample treatment summary in your handout packet, but we're basically, reminding the patient these were the goals that you set. These were the methods that we used that were effective for you in the treatment. This is my recommended homework for you as you move forward. And this is the way that we're going to follow up to support you in maintaining your recovery. One other case example that we're going to talk about is Mark. So Mark, a 50-year-old Caucasian heterosexual cisgendered married male, was a father of 2 middle school-aged children living with family in Irvine, California. And excuse me, when we were working together, he was a stay-at-home dad running a small part-time business as well. So he described the problem by saying, I was always meant to be a big success. All throughout my childhood, the adults in my life were predicting, will he be a doctor or a lawyer? He said he dropped out of graduate school so that the family could move to California for his wife's career. And since then, he had developed low self-esteem and was struggling with depression, anxiety, and procrastination, especially since his business took a big hit during the pandemic. And in his own words, his goal was to lower, depression and anxiety and stop criticizing himself so much and stop procrastinating. So when we worked together on creating his treatment plan, we set the goals as learning and practicing skills for lowering and tolerating anxiety, learning and practicing skills for lowering depression, and for ending problems with procrastination. The treatment plan was to use cognitive methods, exposure methods, some resistance melting methods, and some specific methods for habits for ending procrastination. And then we ended the treatment with relapse prevention training. And then we had some follow-up sessions weekly was the recommendation so that we could maintain his reduction of procrastination. So there were some challenges with Mark as well. He struggled with organization of his notes during the intensive. This poor guy was really getting overwhelmed with notes on this paper and on this one and pulling this from over here. And so I really had to help him organize everything a little bit better and then slow things down and really check in to make sure that he was learning how to use the methods that I was teaching him in his therapy by having him teach me. So I'd show him how to do something and then have him show me how to do it. And that really helped him feel like he was prepared. So we really wanted him to be able to use these tools without me. I'm not necessary for him to continue his improvement. So the tip that I learned here was to remember that really the main goal here is for that client to leave the treatment being like, I know what to do to help myself. I've got tools that are going to work for me from now on. And so we may need to slow down. And then the results of Mark's treatment was in his 6 two-hour sessions over 2 weeks, his depression went down 50%, his anxiety went down 50%. He was within that ideal 0 to 4 range of negative feelings. And then upon checking in with him after treatment, he was maintaining his progress. So here's some tips that I've learned from challenges that I've had in intensive therapy that I'd like to share with you. We want to keep a pace that fits the client and slow down if necessary. Keep it flexible. We can adjust the treatment to fit each individual. Resist the urge to jump straight to methods. We want to stick with listening well and providing empathy, and also using methods for lowering resistance before we would jump to using the methods that bring about change. We want to lean on homework. Homework, even between the intensive sessions, really helps deepen the learning for the patient and makes it more likely that they're going to be able to use the methods on their own. And then we want to insist on relapse prevention. So one thing that I've noticed a couple of times is that people have been so excited that their symptoms went down significantly that they're thinking, hey, I don't need to do the rest of the treatment. Thanks, I'm good to go. And we've got more time left and we haven't done relapse prevention yet. So we really want to encourage them that that's not a good idea, because the recovery is not likely to be maintained if they're not prepared for the inevitable return of some negative emotion. So I do want to wrap things up here today by talking to you a little bit about just our availability for referrals at Feeling Good Institute. This is a sample of our welcome page on our website. If you would like to refer a patient to us, you can direct them to go to feelinggoodinstitute.com and click on this handy dandy big yellow button that says book a free consult, I believe is what it says. It's covered up by my face here for the moment. And then that will walk them through the process for setting up an initial consultation. And I also want to be sure and emphasize the really high quality training and certification program that we have at Feeling Good Institute. There's lots of free webinars that you can access on our website. The courses that we have are fantastic. There's on-demand self-study. There's multi-week live online courses and day-long workshops. I mentioned the one coming up this Friday. That'll be really superb. We have ongoing consultation groups that are really wonderful. And then our certification and therapist community. The 5 levels of certification are really designed to help therapists develop themselves into the most effective clinician that they can be, and really build skills and confidence and provide the best work possible to our patients. And then, you wind up becoming a part of a wonderful community of therapists who practice Team CBT, which is the method that we're using at Feeling Good Institute. And you can learn more about all these training opportunities at feelinggoodpro.com. And then right now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about opportunities for referring people to us specifically for intensives. So I mentioned a couple of times throughout the presentation today that I've found it really wonderful to collaborate with therapists who have patients that are maybe getting a little bit stuck in therapy, and they could use some specific skills that would help them kind of get over a hurdle that they're in their treatment. They don't want to leave the therapist that they're with currently, but they would like to get maybe a different set of skills than what they've had in maybe traditional supportive counseling. And so a therapist may refer someone to us, and then we, with the patient's permission, we collaborate together. We involve them in understanding what the treatment plan is going to be. We communicate with that therapist after the intensive is done. We give them a treatment summary of what worked well in the treatment, and also what our recommendations are for focusing on after the intensive in order to help the client continue to grow in this great recovery that they created with us. and then we pass them back to their therapist. And so if that's something that appeals to you and you'd be interested in collaborating with us and referring someone to us, you can go to feelinggoodinstitute.com and make an appointment for you can have your client go and make that appointment for a free 15-minute consultation. I'm the person who does those as the intensive therapy manager. So you can also reach out to me at kevin@feelinggoodinstitute.com, and my email address is in your handout, the slides for today's presentation. And I'd be happy to talk to you more about intensives if you have questions or you'd like to talk to me about a specific patient that you're considering referring for our program. And so we're wrapping things up for today. We're getting ready to do some Q&A, so please don't go anywhere because there's more to come. And I want to talk to you about how to get your CE credit today. So at 1 p.m. Pacific time today, you're going to want to complete the mandatory CE survey on the course page. So that's back on the web page that you used for getting the Zoom link and coming in to our course today. And you can access the CE survey by clicking complete and continue on the course page at the bottom of the page with the Zoom link. And then upon completion of the CE survey, you're going to receive your certification of completion via email. And then you can email certification@feelinggoodinstitute.com if you've got any questions about getting your CE credit today. And now, Jill's going to help us with any questions that may have been sent to her in the chat so that I can attempt to answer them for you.
We have lots of questions, Kevin.
Okay.
Okay, let's get started. I tried to sort them, but we've got lots of questions. So I'll see how many I can fire at you. So one question we got is, can you do this with adolescents?
Oh my goodness, I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't answer that question for you already. We definitely do intensives with adolescents. 12 and older is what we do at Feeling Good Institute. So that was something that I was going to mention when we were talking about books that could be used, because I love to use the book, the antidepressant book by Jacob Towery, when doing intensives with adolescents.
Great. And Kevin, someone asked, are intensives more effective for anxiety or depression? I'm not sure that we have that data. Let me know if you do, or if anecdotally you have a sense of that.
I would say that I don't have a sense of one, if it being more effective for one or the other. And when I was doing research on research articles that were showing what's effective in doing mass treatment or intensive treatment, there was good information about both. So I think that it's kind of one of those unanswerable questions, maybe.
And then a question about, are intensives at Feeling Good Institute done in person only, or are they available virtually?
They're available in both formats. And of course, during the pandemic, we all got really good at doing virtual therapy. And in our intensive therapy program, we developed, I would say, depending upon the number of goals somebody has, online intensives work really great to do 12 hours over 2 weeks.
Great. Yeah, you had some questions along those lines. So let me ask that now. Some questions along like what's typical, how many hours a day, how many days per week, maybe seeing a typical adult. Are there any differences for adolescents?
Sure. So, this is all with the caveat that it's going to be individualized to that person, because some people, when we're in the assessment, we'll learn that they really want to have like a lot of therapy on one day, right? So I might, depending upon their goals in the treatment, we'll try to keep the intensive very intense, right? Like we might do 3 days in a row of, 4 hours a day and complete their, 12 hours of treatment, including relapse prevention training within just a few days. And that's also sometimes done when somebody is coming from far away and they're staying overnight in a hotel and they don't want to expand this over 2 weeks. Um, but of course, we only want to choose a schedule that's going to fit the problems that they're addressing and the goals that they have for the treatment, not just their travel schedule. With I think it's similarly with teens, we just want to make sure, does somebody have the stamina level to be able to handle a lot of therapy in one day? So you might need to pull back a little bit and consider doing a maximum of 2 hours on one day. Often I see that like let's say like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 hours for 2 weeks is intense enough to keep that momentum going, that makes the treatment more effective. And it also gives people time to integrate what it is that they learned in the session and to practice things on their own and come up with questions and say, hey, I was trying to do this, but I made a mistake. What do I do? And we can guide them.
Another question that came up a couple times is about clients committing up front. Do you offer session packages? Do you schedule a set number of sessions? How do you know how many sessions to book ahead of time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that some of this is really specific to what we're doing in team CBT, because in team, like I know that if somebody's got a goal of, I want to really lower my depression, I know that we're going to be able to make in an intensive a significant change in depression in about 8 hours of therapy, roughly, right? And when I'm going to base some of my choices on the person and what I'm getting from them in the assessment. I might need to expand that a little bit if it seems like, maybe there's a lot of confusion involved in their depression, and so I'm going to want to spread things out a little bit to make it go a little bit longer. If they have a second goal that would also involve some cognitive therapy, like let's say they also want to learn to tolerate and lower anxiety, I might consider that to be about 4 hours, because they're going to be using what they learned from cognitive therapy in depression to address anxiety. And then we're going to be adding the exposure work on top of that. Yeah,
Great.
hopefully that's a good answer.
I think that's an excellent answer.
Okay.
We also had a number of people ask questions about the sort of pre-intensive portion. How do you handle someone asked, is the initial consultation like sort of the diagnostic assessment or like your initial psychosocial evaluation? Does that happen before you meet with the patient? So that's your pre-screening, or do you typically do that as part of the therapy?
Yeah, so what I do is there's a free 15-minute consultation, and right off the bat, I'm assessing for, is this a good fit for them, right? Are they stable? Are they interested in doing homework? Is setting specific goals right for them? And do they have the energy level to participate in a longer session? And are there, we rule out risks, right? And I explain what intensive therapy treatment is like for them, give them an idea of how many hours we're probably talking about, and how this is going to impact their schedule. And if we're both in agreement that this would be a good fit for them, then we schedule a 50-minute assessment and goal setting session. And prior to that session, I send them a battery of surveys to complete. So I'm using what's called the Easy Diagnostic Survey, which is testing for all of the most common reasons that people come into therapy usually. And it's just a great way of gathering a lot of information. So I'm going to get that, psychosocial history a lot from those surveys. And then I'm going to clarify by discussing their answers in the initial part of the assessment session, as we're then focusing in on creating the goals in that assessment and goal setting session. So that would all be done prior to treatment. In treatment, we're not getting into learning their history or what are they looking for in therapy. That's all been done before they're actually in the intensive.
That's great. Someone asked, and maybe there are two questions that I think might be related. One question was, do you ever do this as part of a team? Like, do you ever have two therapists working with someone? Someone does this part, someone does that part.
Yeah.
And then related to that, several people did ask about fees for intensive therapy at Feeling Good Institute. And so I kind of thought those two questions are a little bit linked, right? In if you are doing it as a team, and then how fees work out.
Sure. So first of all, yes, we do intensive as a team sometimes. And that can be a really great way to enhance the quality of the treatment, right? So there may be two therapists who are available to work with this person, and one of them is really great with cognitive therapy, and the other one is, maybe like a really great OCD specialist, and they're really good at exposure and response prevention as well as other team methods. So they'll split the intensive, and the patient will work with one therapist for part of the treatment and the other one for the other part. That's done quite often. And then when it comes to the fees, there's a range of fees. You see, the therapists at FGI are in private practice, and they're independent, right? And they charge their fee based on their level of education and their type of licensure, excuse me, and their level of certification within the team model. So you're going to see a range for a licensed therapist between $250 to $500 per hour. And then there are some lower fee therapists that are working in the $95 to $150 range, and they're available for intensives as well. So when you think about a 50-minute assessment session, and then maybe a 50-minute session before treatment to meet the therapist that they're going to be working with, and then 12 hours of therapy, and then possibly two weekly follow-up sessions, we're talking about between 14 and 16 hours of therapy. Let's say if somebody was somewhere around, 345 for that. I don't like to do math in front of people and make mistakes, so I'm going to pull out the calculator here. So we're talking about, $3,000 to $5,000 for a 12-hour intensive, plus the pre and post work.
And again, the idea being that it really ranges, and that when people have more concerns about fees, then we'll try to match them with lower fee therapists and things like that.
Yes.
We have 1 minute left. So a couple of people did ask about insurance. And so since you're talking about fees, lots of people had that practical question. Can you bill insurance for this? How do you bill insurance for this? I don't know if you have 1 minute of wisdom on that.
Yeah, I tried to answer that in my presentation. I don't know, as we all know, there could be a whole workshop just on this question, right? And insurance is real tricky. I would want to work that out before even offering intensives, right? So if you're in network with someone, check in with them, say, I'm going to be offering intensive therapy. How can I successfully, help this patient use their insurance with you, and see if you can get some information that way. The codes recently changed as far as what can be used for an extended session. So you're just going to want to be careful that you know what is billable. And then for people who are out of network, you do want to be really upfront with patients that most insurance companies only understand once a week for 50 minutes. They don't understand more than 50 minutes of therapy in one day. So the reality is they may be paying out of pocket for the treatment. I wish I had a better answer than that.
Okay, that's great. So let me say thank you so much to you, Kevin. This was a wonderful presentation. And I'll remind everyone who's looking for CE credit to make sure that you go on the course page and you'll click complete and continue after the page where you found the information on the Zoom, and you'll see the CE survey. You need to make sure you complete that right now, if at all possible, and certainly by end of day today if you're looking to get your certificate. And anything else you'd like to say, Kevin, as we're saying goodbye?
Oh, I just want to say thank you. What a great opportunity. And I just got to say, anybody who gets an opportunity to study with Jill, please take it. My life was transformed by Jill, learning therapy from her, and I feel like I've been able to be at a level of success that I would not have dreamed of, and it's because I learned from wonderful people like Jill and David and Angela, and So that's my farewell here.
Oh, well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. You did a wonderful job. Take care, everybody.
I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Kevin.